Hi. So we're going to be starting at 2 o'clock. I just opened the meeting now. This is fine to just wait here.
I'm teaching LDA 70, which is just this great, if after taking Elizabeth's course on 21 and you're all relaxed, LDA 70 makes you all stressed again because you deal with models and materials and it's frustrating. But we're looking at space making. So how to, I guess, move from an object-oriented way of looking at the world where you're looking at maybe material, things that are in the landscape to the landscape itself or the space itself. And it's kind of a hard switch and a different way of thinking that we explore using these sort of three-dimensional models. So it's going to be really fun. And I get excited about the form making that we do as part of that. So, and then also just to sort of get you thinking about later in life, I am teaching this fall. Sorry to skip ahead, but in my time, I am teaching a senior studio. So later when you get to your last year, you really just jump into one sort of space or one place. And we're looking this fall at the Sacramento River and all these sort of social issues and how can people access the place, the infrastructure that's there. And we're doing all kinds of design in partnership with the city of Sacramento and the Sacramento Regional Housing Agency. So excited about that, something to look forward to. Your project will be different by the time you get there, but just to keep that in mind. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. So now we'll move on to the spring quarter, and Professor Stephen Wheeler will teach LDA 3.
Okay. Hi, I'm Professor Steve Wheeler. I have been in LDA since arrived in late 2006. And I have a few slides here too, so I'm going to try to share my screen. And let's see, how do I do this? Let's give this a try. Hopefully this will, and let me make this bigger. Okay. So my overall interest since I was a grad student in the 1990s has been sustainable urbanism. How do we get to a future that can be a good one long-term for humans and for ecologies? And how might that come about? And then I have a number of sub-interests. On the big picture, I've written a number of books trying to sort of pull the pieces together and paint the picture for people. And these are a couple of books that are used as texts fairly widely. And then I have a new one coming out next year from UC Press called Reimagining Sustainable Cities with Christina Rosen, who teaches at Temple University in Philadelphia. Then I have a number of more detailed interests, one of which is in built landscapes, which are various patterns of urban form, which make up the big sprawling metropolitan regions that we see around us, and how we can understand those and improve those over time. Second one is climate change planning, which is sort of driving the sustainability agenda these days. And in particular, how we get to carbon neutrality by the middle of the century, which is the goal we have to get to. Recently, I seem to have meandered into a project looking at urban greening and how we reduce heat, and also how we improve climate justice and social equity with regard to heat and climate adaptation. And lastly, how do we actually get to a society that's capable of planning for sustainability? And probably I will focus on this most in the next few years. So those are areas that I look at. I teach LDA 3, Sustainable Development Theory and Practice, every spring. And the bottom line from that class is that sustainability is not about fancy new technology or other things. It's about new ways of thinking, or in some cases, old ways of thinking long-term, thinking holistically, and being very proactive about solving problems. How do we get to carbon neutrality, and how do we get to a equitable society, deal with social justice issues? Every spring, I've also been teaching the capstone for the SED major, LDA 142, which is called Applying Sustainable Strategies. Every fall, I teach a grad course. I usually let a couple upper division undergrads into that too, which is an introduction to urban planning and design. And I'm the chair of the community development grad group, so that means every quarter I have to organize the speaker series. But we do have some undergrads who enroll in that, and it's a useful way to hear faculty present their research interests and outside professionals also. Do keep lecture series like that in mind as you're filling out your course schedule. So that's pretty much me. Whoops, I'm going backwards here. I look forward to meeting all of you.
Thank you. And then, so the other course that's offered in the spring, and this is for the transfer students that are doing all of the landscape architecture courses, the LDA courses this year, is LDA 50, and Professor Greco teaches that.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you all here. Well, I teach LDA 50 in the spring, and that's it's a course that follows on from your introductory biology class. And we pick up from there and try to go a little deeper into a lot of the site analysis variables that you'll be thinking about for each site. I'm an ecologist, but I also have a degree in landscape architecture. So I've got that sort of integrative, the one brain that can integrate those two things together, as opposed to bringing two people together and trying to make them think about it. So I spent my graduate career trying to figure out, what does design with nature actually mean? And I hope to impart that on you in LDA 50. where we go through physical variables like climate and hydrology and soils. Then we talk about populations and communities and ecosystems. And my goal here is to try to teach you about what nature is so that you can design with it. That was something I was never taught in school. And so this is the course I wish I had had. And I really enjoyed teaching it. It's at the point where every minute is important in that class because I have so many aspects of this area of study to impart on you. We end the class with ecological design. I teach you how to do wetland design, and that brings it all together, hopefully, for you. A key aspect of this class is learning what we call wildlife habitat relationships. And that is a science that tries to predict which habitats are used by certain animals. And so you can design habitat for particular wildlife species. So one of the key things about my research is I'm trying to understand the sustainability of wildlife, of nature through time. As you know, our population, our global population is expanding enormously, and each time it expands, a little bit of nature goes away. And we need to be able to somehow plan for nature in the future. Feeding 10 billion people is going to be very difficult and keep nature around. So that's something that every landscape architect and environmental planner needs to be considering these days. So I hope LDA 50 gives you that background to think in those dimensions. My research looks at similar things. I'm very interested in how to sustain nature in cultural landscapes, because we know cultural landscapes will be expanding into natural areas more and more. The better we design that, the more likely we are to have and sustain nature and wildlife around us. We all know nature is a very important thing for our mental well-being. So we've got to explicitly plan for it and try to avoid species extinctions and other negative consequences of something, things like climate change. And we'll talk about that as well. So that's LDA 50, and look forward to seeing you there. Teaching it in COVID world is very, very difficult because most of the labs are supposed to be field trips.
Field trips, yeah.
Can't do that. Yeah, it's a real challenge. So we've developed some videos, and boy, I just can't wait till this is over so that we can get back out in normal mode. But the other class I'll be teaching this year is this fall is the Geographic Information Systems class. So Introduction to GIS, very powerful tool that links to CAD very well. And I encourage you all to take this class. It's not required, but highly recommended for your career. It's a skill that you literally can get a job after taking my course. So that's a benefit, as well as allowing you access to an enormous amount of spatial data for your projects. So you'll always be able to find some map data using GIS technology, which is getting more and more powerful and more accessible every year. So that's what I'm doing this year.
Thank you, Steve. So next, I'm going to introduce you to two other faculty that you may not have this year, but you will certainly have them as you move through the majors. And so Emily Schlichman can talk about the courses that she will teach you probably next year.
Great.
So going into next year.
Thanks, Charla. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I'm the newest member of the faculty. I think I've been here for 9 months now. So brand new. see, in my background, just to give you a little bit of background before going into the courses that I'll be teaching this next year. So prior to Davis, I worked professionally in a landscape architecture, urban design, urban planning firm in the Bay Area. And I also did a bit of practice-based research lab. So I helped kind of found a research lab at the firm. And let's see, in terms of classes here, I am teaching LDA 120, which is an advanced computer graphics course. LDA 102, which is a research methods course in landscape architecture. And then also LDA 171, which is an urban design and planning studio. So 2 in the winter, 1 in the spring. Hopefully I'll see many of you next year, the following year. And then in terms of my my research and kind of my focus, it's kind of in between urbanism, climate change adaptation, and emerging modes of visualization, looking at kind of mapping, monitoring, and modeling tools. And so right now I have a couple of current projects that are looking at community resilience in the wildland-urban interface, which is the zone where communities bump up against wildlands and are vulnerable to fire, which we're experiencing in Northern California right now. So yeah, so that's it for me. I'm really excited that you're all here, and then we get to get to meet you hopefully in person soon, and if not, we can communicate, virtually.
Thank you, Emily. So last but not least, we have Professor Haven Kears, who's responsible for guiding the junior landscape architecture students into creating this wonderful oasis in our courtyard. So Haven.
So my claim to fame is that I am the only person teaching an in-person class in the landscape architecture department this quarter, and one of only 5 in the entire College of Ag. So yeah, no pressure. We'll see how it goes. This is my 3rd year teaching in the department, but I've been on campus for a number of years. I worked at the Arboretum for the 5 years sort of before that. And so, as you may be able to guess, I am the plant person. And so I definitely have a love of plants and use them to create spaces and use them, try and get more people excited about the plant aspect of landscape architecture as opposed to just like objects, and integrating that. And so basically, I'm trying to do sort of a lot of what Steve Greco was saying in terms of like this idea of reconciliation ecology. So how can you create something that is beneficial to both insects, wildlife, and people? And what are those types of designs that you can do? And so I do a lot of focus on green infrastructure. And so within that, it's really how do you create things like rain gardens or bioswales, or my personal favorite, green roofs, which I can talk about for hours if anyone is interested ever. But how do you do those so that they are something that's beautiful, that people, that you can put in urban environments, and they can do like great things for the environment, and you have this sustainability, but at the same time, it's a place that people want to be at, that it's something that's beautiful, that it makes them feel like they're in nature, but it's also a designed thing. So that's kind of where I am with that, but also how to do it in a practical way, right? So I focus a lot on maintenance, and I focus a lot on the construction of these, which kind of segues into the 160 class, which is the designing and building of the Hunt Hall Courtyard. And so this is now my 8th year working on that. And each year, basically, the class chips away at a little part of the courtyard. And so we've been building it year by year, creating green roof. We've created a bike rack that has a green roof on top of it. We've created also a rain garden in there, shade structure last year. So this year, the big reveal, we are going to make the courtyard COVID ready, or pandemic ready. And we're just going to look at different interventions that we can do to make it a great outdoor space so that people could have reservable meeting space out there, or sit out on the patio and have some sort of social distancing in between. We're going to create, our first project is actually going to be to create a mobile pinup board so that we could have pinups outside in the courtyard. So I'm really excited about it. We were talking earlier about, whether we're going to be able to stay in person, but fingers crossed that it'll happen. And then, so that's the class that I teach in the fall. In the winter, I teach a senior studio on planting design. And then this spring, this is my plug because it's a new class. I'm teaching a class that's going to be an elective on plants in the city. And so how do you integrate plants into urban life? So that's me. And I'm so excited that all of you are here. And it's a bummer that I don't see you until you're juniors. So like, email me, come find me once we're in person again, but definitely feel free to reach out. Thanks.
All right, well, so we'll be watching your class. We expect many pictures to be posted so that we can see all the things that you're doing to the courtyard.
Nice.
So I want to open it up to questions. And so I've been thinking about how to do this. And so what you can do is if you have a question, put like me in the chat and I'll call on you. Or if you don't want to, talk on Zoom, you can type your question into the chat and then I'll read it for you. So I don't have any questions yet. Does anybody want to say something? No questions at all for all of these people? Okay. Okay, so we have a question. I'd like to ask about your opinions on pursuing a master's degree in general architecture after completing the landscape architecture program at Davis. So David will answer this.
It's actually a really common route that people take into architecture. Sometimes because you find that at UC Davis, there isn't an architecture major. But also having come through architecture program, I did my undergraduate in a completely different field and then did a master's in architecture. And most master's programs in architecture really value interdisciplinary work. So they really want people coming from all kinds of different fields. I personally don't recommend going into architecture as an undergraduate because it like focuses you so narrowly on buildings. So coming at it from a broad landscape perspective and then going into architecture, I think gives you both really good skills, but also more importantly, like a really broad understanding of where buildings fit into the overall landscape, which is just one part of it. So yeah, I totally recommend that. A lot of people go on to graduate degrees after both LDA and SED. I don't know, the percentages, maybe 10 to 20% depending on the year. But any questions like that, I'm always happy to field them. And if I don't have a good answer, I will send you off to somebody who does.
Thank you. So anybody else have a question? Do you want to just unmute yourself and chime in?
Yeah, I had a question.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm a transfer. So it's my first year, and I was really like looking forward to like studying abroad and stuff. And I was wondering maybe like what like the chances are that like we'd still be able to study abroad. Like I know one that interested me was like the northern cities one in the summer, or northern European cities in the summer. And I was wondering if something like that is still likely to happen, or I guess just information about that too.
So I teach one of the 2 summer abroad programs, or actually 3 now, in our that offer LDA credit. Mine is on urbanism and housing in Barcelona. The Northern Cities course is also super popular. This year it's being planned. All of these courses for the summer are marching forward as if nothing is different. So you'll see information sessions go up. I don't know. Nobody's talking about the reality of it. I really wish I could say it's going to happen. I am not really that positive that it's going to happen. I suspect it's not. On the other hand, something that that Global Affairs, which is the big umbrella under which Study Abroad fits, one thing that they're doing is trying to come up with some sort of global alternative or experience. And I don't know if Sustainable Cities will offer this, but we are at the same time planning a parallel course to the study abroad in Spain, which works with a set of architects in Barcelona to co-design a co-housing neighborhood in Davis. And so those are ways that you sort of get to know, you actually get to work with people who are in those other places, get to know those places virtually. It's totally inadequate because you really want to be there. But it is still a global experience. So I know that they're working on those kinds of things.
Thank you.
So another question is, what specific jobs do people go into after graduating from sustainable environmental design?
Okay, I'll respond to that if I can add to the previous one too,
Okay.
which is that to get abroad, going through official UC Davis programs are one way to do it. But there are other ways too. You can go on programs with pretty much any other school and get Davis credit for it. I mean, talk to the master advisor first. Or you can sometimes arrange study directly with other universities. And there are some universities that Davis has long-standing relationships with, like we've had a lot of students go to Copenhagen. And you can likewise get credit for that. So talk to the master advisor if you really want to go abroad about some of the different options for doing that. And there may be places even in the pandemic like that are still open. Like we did have a student go to New Zealand a couple years ago, and you probably have to quarantine when you get there, but assuming you can get there, everything will be in person at this point. The question about SED jobs, they do a lot of different things. I usually have a panel of SED alums come back in and talk to the current students about how they got their jobs and what they're doing every spring. And some of them are working for consulting firms. Some of them are working for cities or other levels of government. Some of them are working for the private sector. We have 4 SED grads working for Caltrans. If you want a secure job, go for Caltrans. But we have one SED student working for the co-housing company. We have one SED student working for the U.S. Federal Government General Services Administration, which manages federal property. They're all over the place. They're doing a lot of different things. We can talk more about that down the line, but it's a pretty big range. But my advice for you who are thinking about SED is to develop an interest and take elective courses around that interest as you go through. And then you will be better prepared to head in a particular direction when you graduate. And of course, talk to the master advisor or other faculty about that as you go along, get their ideas about courses, how to focus your work.
So there's a few questions on the technology that the students will be learning. Maybe Emily, you could speak to this on the different kinds of design software that both SED and landscape architecture students will be learning. And then also, how does GIS technology help, how does that impact the ability to get a job afterwards?
Sure. And I bet Steve could also, speak to the GIS question a bit. In terms of software, I would say there's a whole suite of software that is used professionally. And I think in the program, we focus on the Adobe suite a lot. So that's Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, 3D modeling programs. So SketchUp, which is used professionally, as well as Rhino. And then professionally also, people do use a lot of GIS. And so I know that's something that Steve teaches with, is it 150? And that's also something that gets incorporated into a couple of kind of more advanced studios. So GIS, and then there are a couple of kind of visualization softwares that are being tested also in the program. So Lumion is one that is also, used kind of professionally as well. So I would say those are kind of the general ones. And of course, anyone else kind of hop in there if I'm forgetting any. But I think those are kind of the main ones that we focus on. And I think, professionally, all of those, are super helpful, not only in landscape architecture firms, but also, in kind of environmental design professions as well, especially kind of with the Adobe suite and just having kind of a basic understanding of 3D modeling programs and mapping, et cetera. So yeah, those are kind of the ones that we focus on. And Steve, I don't know if you want to add anything about GIS.
Yeah, absolutely. GIS is an incredibly powerful tool. And, you may not harness all its power, but you will want its practicality. And the practicality comes from, it's a base map machine. It will make you a custom base map for any site, as large or as small as it might be. GIS is georeferenced information, so there are an awesome number of websites with spatial data for free that you can download. The USGS, US Geological Survey, they publish an enormity of map data that you can get at all different scales. And you can create a custom base map. And generally from there, in my studios, we start off with the GIS, and then we might export. We might decide on the scale at which we want to be designing at, and then print out or export from the GIS into something like Adobe Illustrator and start doing design work. Then once you're finished with your design work and you want perhaps to analyze the implications of that design, you can re-import it back into GIS and do additional analysis on that. GIS is not the most friendly environment for design per se. And so it's a great environment to create maps, base maps, and then to export into more traditional CAD programs. But there's literally seamless integration now between the CAD programs and GIS, and it's pretty easily imported and exported. That wasn't true years ago, but getting more so now. I've noticed a trend that people with GIS skills will get jobs readily, even if you don't have, say, the qualifications in other areas. So the technical aspect of your knowledge, your technical knowledge, can land you a job. But what you want to do is you want to master how you integrate that with your design tools. And so that's what I would recommend, that you pursue that angle in your studies and in your professional work.
Oh, great.
The only other piece I would add, obviously, which you sort of glossed over, was Autocad, which is the it's such an obvious.
That is probably the most important one. You're right.
It is the base sort of drawing platform in which we all do our very, very measured drawings for architecture, landscape architecture, and a little bit of planning. So you'll get familiar with that, especially if you're on the LDA track.
I would like to add something else to that, David. Thank you for bringing that up. That was very important. And AutoCAD and ArcGIS, they work together. They're very interchangeable, and each has a very powerful capability that the other doesn't have. So obviously, GIS is great at analysis, and CAD is great at design, but the reverse may not be true of each of those programs.
Okay, so so I'm going to now ask Patsy and Haven if you could talk about opportunities for undergraduate research, or research, even research jobs, research assistants for undergraduates, but the opportunities for undergraduate research for students in our major.
So I'll jump in, Haven, you can jump in too. I think one thing that's really great about UC Davis in general is that we really encourage undergraduate research more so than a lot of other institutions. And so that I think as you're getting started, some of your early years, there may not be as many opportunities, partly because you may not be as focused on the kind of research that you're interested in doing. But we see many of our juniors and seniors get very involved in doing independent research. So maybe you come up with an idea, a project that you're working on, and we do this particularly with capstone projects, and then you work with a faculty member. You can actually go to them and ask them for their input and reach out to other people as well. And we've had many students actually submitting work into, there's an annual review of undergraduate research on campus. And so we often have students that present their work at that event. And so that's really exciting. I think there's other opportunities though. I know I've worked in the past with some students who have gotten together because they wanted to do a design competition, right? And so a few students will hear about a design competition, they'll put together a team, and then they will come to a faculty and ask for a faculty advisor to work with them on doing a design competition. So some of it is self-generated, self-motivated, the things that you want to do, that you can come up with things. But then I think we also have opportunities as faculty, sometimes that we have projects we're working on that have some funding that we can bring you in to work on those projects with us too. And you have to read your email, right? We typically put together an announcement and we have Charlotte send an email to everybody. And so it's important to look at those and then contact us about it. The other thing is, it's not research related, but other opportunities. We do a lot of upperclassmen mentors. And so like for LDA 1, I think I have 6 students that are juniors and seniors in landscape architecture and sustainable environmental design that are going to be mentors in the class. So they're actually going to be coming into discussion sections and helping out and sharing sort of their experience in the major. And so we find it's a really good way for you to have someone closer to your own age that's been through the program that can help you navigate being on campus as well. So.
Yeah, and I think I would just add that another great way to sort of get hands-on experience in research is through internships. And that like the Arboretum has a ton of, they have their learning by leading internships where you're really actually out there building gardens, making decisions, and just learning a ton of different skills that we don't necessarily offer within the department, that gives you that kind of just practical experience that I think a lot of students are looking for. And then internships throughout campus. But I think that's a really good way to get some good experience, and to get, in often cases, there is research experience too. It's not just like hands-on doing, it's also, you know, one of the Arboretum internships is on museum education. And so it's doing the research to come up with signs for different parts, interpretation signs for different parts of campus, or figuring out how to engage the public in different types of things. So I think that checking out internships is a great way. And then just to add to what Patsy was saying, there are some paid undergraduate research, you know, opportunities. And I hired my first student over the summer, and it was really like, what I would say is just be proactive. This was a student who came to me with a written proposal, had seen something that I had written and said, look, this is how I want to help. This is what I want to do for you. And it was one of those things where I was like, okay, let's make it work. So definitely, if there's something that interests you, talk to the faculty and see if you can make something work.
Yeah, I have a similar situation. I had a student contact me this summer, was really interested in learning about working with young people. And I've got her partner now with one of my graduate students who has a funded research project. And so now they're going to be working together, and she's going to get research units for working on that. David has had a number of students in the past working on the on campus on some projects. We also have one of our visiting lecturers, Kevin Perry. He is the mentor for the SLLC, the student
SLGI.
SLGI now?
Yeah, I think so. A student
Leaders in Green Infrastructure.
There you go.
And they've been doing projects on campus and also in the community. They just did a project at the Davis High School. And so they sort of go in and look for a problem that needs to be fixed. So they'll look for an opportunity of where water is coming off of a rooftop but just running into a catch basin, and looking, how can we claim that water and turn this into a beautiful rain garden? And so many of our students work with Kevin on these projects. It's really fun to see everything that they've been doing. And they get lots of good press too. They usually make the cover of the Davis Enterprise once a year or so.
Well, and he also just sent out an announcement saying that this year they're going to be entering the Campus Rainworks Challenge. So that's a potential design competition, and they're going to be using the Davis High School as their site. So really great potential. They're recruiting for students right now.
And this is for
the Campus Rainworks Challenge is actually a national competition. It's led by the EPA from the Environmental Protection Agency. And so we had several years where students entered into that. And so that's great. I guess I missed that email. So it's great to know they're going to do that again this year. So you just have to look for those opportunities. There's lots of them in our program.
David, do you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to add, I know that you're just entering right now, but one of the last things that you can do in this program is to complete an undergraduate thesis. And you can do that both as an SED major or as an LDA major. And in fact, the course that Emily is going to be teaching, 102, is sort of research methods in LDA and also environmental design. And that's going to be a course that especially SED students will be taking as you go off and start taking courses in other disciplines to try to focus your interests. It's a class intended to give you a bit of a framework on what is research, how do you conduct research, how do you ask a good question and figure out how to solve it or find answers to it. And that culminates in a thesis, a written thesis or a design thesis that you will do in your last quarters as a senior. And those are really some wonderful projects. You get to work closely with a faculty member or two, and maybe an outside expert or community member. So I encourage you to start thinking as you start finding things that are really fascinate you about environmental design, to start working with us and trying to develop those ideas and see if you might turn it into a thesis.
And I just want to put in a plug there. One of our seniors last year won the National Research Award. One of our undergraduate seniors, she won that award, and that's just such a great accomplishment. So we'll have to guess there's an announcement probably on our homepage about that. If not, we need to get that up. So.
All right, so I'm gonna just kind of open it up to like wise words for the students as they start their education. Elizabeth, do you have any wise words for the students? You want me to come back to you? You have to unmute.
Sorry, I forgot I had to unmute. I would just try to find the joy in all you do, even classes that you just listen to our interests, listen to the faculty interests. We're all over the place. So you can definitely find someone who shares your interest and follow your passion, find the joy in what you do, and then your schoolwork won't be work. I feel that way about my job. I am so lucky to be teaching in this subject matter that I absolutely am passionate about. So follow your bliss.
Great. Corey, do you have any wise words for the students?
Have words.
You have words?
I would just say that, yes, you've heard from all of us, and we all know a lot collectively about landscape architecture, but you already know a lot too. You know about where you're from and your family backgrounds and your cultures and the way that you interact with the landscape already. So you are going to be bringing back that to our program as well. So we're really excited about that and the way that you can inform us about the landscape and about how we interact with it.
All right, Steve, Greco, do you have any wise words?
Sure. That magic word design is really important to always think in a designer's mindset, which is it doesn't have to be this way, right? We can conceptualize of other ways of being, of living. And this stretches across every aspect of environmental design. And just to keep an open mind, you'd be shocked at how a little bit of new information can transform your design concept. And these are really important things to consider, especially participatory design, where you're getting information from users or potential users, and you want to keep an open mind about those users and potential uses that you might not be considering in your own bubble. So try to break that bubble and get out there and listen.
All right, Stephen Wheeler. Wise words for the students.
Be proactive. Go out there and talk to faculty, email us, set up appointments. Also look proactively for courses all across campus that might be useful to you. Don't just stay within a few departments that you know of. This is a big university. Juniors and seniors can take graduate courses also. Don't be scared of them. They're a great way to get to know faculty better and to get deeper into particular topics. You have to get the instructor's permission, but many grad courses are very small and you can do that. So go get them.
All right, Emily.
Oh goodness. I would say, I mean, I think right now where we're at, it may be a tough time to be positive with everything that's going on in the world, but I actually feel like now is an incredible time for designers to make some changes and to inspire change, you know, in the world, both socially, ecologically, even economically. So I think I would say don't be discouraged, and yeah, try to stay positive and think about your work as being really impactful for the world, because I really think it can be. So that's it.
All right, Haven.
Okay, my big words are go outside. You're going to be on Zoom meetings for a lot of time. You're going to be like so sick of your computer. Find refuge in the outdoors, whether it's a spot on campus, whether it's a spot in your neighborhood. Find a spot, be outside. It'll do wonders for your levels of stress.
But check AQI first.
Excellent point. Thank you, Emily.
Blair. Okay. So, and then Patsy.
I would say, you know, you put me last, but I think the thing is find fun, right? Find the fun. This is a wonderful, both of our majors are just wonderful majors, and you should be enjoying your classes, right? You should be enjoying having to, when we send you out to do a site analysis or to do behavior observations or whatever it is, or to do your sketchbook, right? When Liz has you sketching. You should be having fun and you should be enjoying it. So I would say look for the fun in your courses, really seek that out, and seek it out with your classmates, even though you guys are going to be on Zoom, right? Being able to, you know, still connect with each other. I think that's one of the things that's going to really be missing from our program is our students really get to know a little bit too much about each other because they end up spending 24/7. Our students are some of the few that actually have keys to the building and have keys to your room. And so our students come and go all the time. You haven't been in the studios unless you came for a tour before we shut down in March. You know, our studios all have sofas that convert to beds, right? Because somebody's always going to want to take a nap before they have to bike home. And so as much as possible, reach out to each other and try to build that community. I know it's going to be a lot harder, but I know I learned more from my classmates than I ever learned from any of the faculty I had. I learned from my classmates because we'd be sitting up at 2 and 3 a.m. and trying to figure out a solution to the design. And we would just have these great conversations and come up with great ideas, or they would share with me something they've come across. And I don't want you guys to miss that opportunity because this is not a situation where you're all in competition with each other. You're all in this together. And we're all here to support you in that. And that's going to be really important, because in design, there's not one right answer, and you're all going to have different answers to things. And being able to talk to your classmates about that is going to go a long way to help you come up with those creative ideas and come up with, what are the big issues I should be thinking about, and what are some other ways that I can approach it. So I would just say fun, and, reach out to other people and try to make those kind of connections.
Great. And David.
Oh, I'm last, Patsy, and you stole my thing of fun.
That's right. Sorry.
No, I think it's really important. I would say college goes by really fast. My favorite classes that I took weren't even on my list of classes to take, Charlotte. It was like an oil painting class that I probably shouldn't have taken. But I still go back to that and occasionally will oil paint, and it brings me so much joy. Find the thing that brings you joy. It might have nothing to do with this major. Like join a cycling group, or get out there and plant trees with Tree Davis, or do something that you're really passionate about. And you'll bring that back to the things you do in class, or you'll just bring it back by being a happier person overall. Yeah, go outside, draw, sketch, paint, enjoy. All
right. So I want to thank all the faculty for coming. This is great. I mean, it's been a kind of a wild summer, and I'm so happy to see all of you back. And so I want to tell the students, don't hesitate to reach out to these guys. The list of all the faculty with their email addresses and contact information is on our website. Don't be afraid to reach out, email them, and ask a question. Seek them out for advice. And and then I will have, this has prompted some questions for some of the students. And so right after this meeting, I will open my personal meeting room for drop-in advising. And so I have posted the link. I will post it again because now it's further up the chat. Here, I'll post it again. And so you can come into my room and I will see everyone that has a question, and we'll sort out whatever issue that is so that you're ready for classes tomorrow, starting tomorrow. So that's it. Thank you very much for coming. This is worked out so much better than I thought it was going to. And I really appreciate all the students that are here and all the faculty that arrived. And we're gonna have a great year. I don't care what the negative stuff that's going on, we're gonna have a great year, and go Ags.
Bye.
Bye all.